Welcome everyone to the Civalgo Podcast, the podcast that elevates the level of the construction industry by supplying insights, advice, and best practices. So today we have a very special episode. We're actually on the road here in Boston with three amazing guests, and we're going to talk about technology within the construction industry. So maybe guys, before we dive into the subject, it would be great if you can kind of introduce each other. Maybe Tim, you can start.
Yes, my name is Tim Curran. I've been software for about 35 years. Actually went to college to be a chemical engineer, but decided to become a developer at Accenture. My first role, I worked my way through product management and implementation, marketing, sales, and got an opportunity to be a CEO about 20 years ago. And I've been a CEO of 5 different software companies. The last 3 have been in construction and real estate technology. I was the CEO of a company called Vela Systems, which was acquired by Autodesk that became BIM 360 and the construction cloud today. Very interesting. This is about 20 years ago, so very early construction tech. And then a company called Building Engines, which was about building operations, so post-construction operations of a building. And then I'm currently the CEO of a company called RapidWorks, and we service subcontractors, especially heavy equipment subcontractors. So I've had reaching the end of my career, and happy to be sharing some thoughts today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So next up, we have Kyle Maikath.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. My name is Kyle Maikath. Did not come to software maybe through a natural way. Studied biology in college. This is the second software company I've worked for and been the longest run I'm on right now. Been 20 years in real estate technology, a variety of different hats for Building Engines, for everything from customer support, implementation, sales, and just really excited to be here today and talking with you all.
Yeah, that's going to be great because we're going to get into customer support. The best system in the world is not worth anything if it's not implemented correctly, right?
I totally agree.
And last but not least, Rich Humphrey.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here. So my background is a little bit different than these guys. I was actually an industry practitioner. I'm a degreed civil engineer. My first job was at the Army Corps of Engineers. I worked for the Civil Engineering Research Lab, and then I worked for a large mid-Atlantic general contractor as a project manager, a company called Clark Construction. That's where most of my industry experience is. And then I quickly kind of jumped to technology. I spent 10 years at Autodesk. I ran the civil business, and this is where I met Tim when Vela came in. I was on the leadership team for a year for BIM 360. And then from Autodesk, I worked for a company called B2W, spent a couple of years there, which is a heavy civil construction software business. And then I ran the construction business at Bentley Systems, which was mainly focused around BIM and VDC and project management based on VDC modeling for heavy civil construction at Bentley. And now I work for a company called, I'm an executive for a company called Contractor, which is one of the leaders in project controls and cost management in construction.
Thank you so much, guys, for being here. Today, we're going to be 4 guys talking about technology in the construction space. And let's dive directly into it. So, first of all, what do you think about the construction industry right now? And where do we think it actually changed in the past years?
I'll go first. Yeah, so it's exciting times in the construction industry right now. I've been watching the evolution of engineering construction for a long time. I've been in construction and engineering software for, like I said, about 20 plus years. So I've seen us evolve from CAD to basically 3D modeling, to, from a construction standpoint, the introduction of mobile applications when mobile apps, cell phones became ubiquitous on the job site. And that's really what helped the industry kind of take off in terms of the adoption of software. Because before that, it was mainly technology related to replacing spreadsheets like P6 scheduling or financial accounting, ERP systems and estimating. But now it's exploded to a lot of different types of people in the extended project team with project management, field management, web, mobile, and now the advent of AI to augment things around VDC and BIM. So
Okay.
It's pretty exciting.
Pretty exciting. Besides all of that high tech, our industry is still like 70 to 80% pen and paper. So maybe, Tim, with the experience you have with subtrades, where do we stand today?
I think, like Rich said, Architects and engineers, 1982, AutoCAD was released. They were the first to go. I think general contractors had a whole wave of adoption in the 2000s. And I think you're right. The subcontractors are now embracing and getting involved. And we're finally seeing software companies caring about subcontractors. So, it took some solutions so that they can start adopting. And I think one thing about construction is everyone's out in the field. Like these aren't in buildings. The employees of Turner or a subcontractor, they're out in the field. It's a little harder to get adoption trained. Everyone's dispersed. It's not 50 or 100 or 200 people in a building where you can get in a conference room. They're in job trailers. They're on the job site. So I think that was always inherently going to kind of prohibit or slow adoption. You got a lot of people out there in the field, but huge industry, these are highly technical. It's a very technical industry, very competent, able to adopt. It's just a matter of getting out there. It's going to take a while. I think adoption is still accelerating and ramping, which is awesome.
So we're still at the tip of the iceberg, right?
Very much so.
So maybe Kyle, on the adoption, and we were talking about implementation earlier because I know you're a specialist in that. So what do you see happening in these modern times where digital shift is present in our everyday?
Yeah, I mean, I think like both these guys have said, it's changed like a lot in the last 5 years, especially where technology's gone from like a nice to have or maybe even perceived by some individuals as like something they have to do versus now something that they want to do and they recognize that they need to do. And I think that the way you can accelerate implementation it's a combination of carrot and stick. So I think, the carrot is you have to help people understand what's in it for them. Like you have to lead them to wanting to use it and to helping them understand how they're going to get value out of it. But at the end of the day, the carrot only gets the donkey to walk so far. You have to have the stick also, and you have to reinforce it. So there has to be policies and procedures that make things required and enforce that technology is used. But again, if you're doing it, if you lead with the carrot, you're going to get a lot of adoption right out of the gate from that.
And adoption being critical, what was the biggest challenge you've seen on adoption in these recent years?
I mean, I think for a lot of people, again, it's helping them understand the value that they're going to get out of the technology and also making the experience simple for them. So software, I think, oftentimes has a tendency to be overly complicated, and for workers in the field and for point solutions that somebody has specific things that they need to do, I think you need to make the experience easy for them and it's easily understandable so that it's repeatable and that not only they want to do it, but it's not something that they dread doing. It's something that they can just easily do without thinking too hard about it.
I think the one thing about construction job sites is it's always chaotic. There's always a problem, a fire every day, right? And how do you relax and take a morning off on a job site when the construction's happening around you? It's hard. You got to have a lot of faith and trust, and so it's difficult to command attention and do some training in a job trail or whatever. So yeah, you got to appreciate there's a lot going on a job site. It's very complex,
So when is the good time to actually invest in your processes, right? So in some states we have slower seasons, and in other we don't. It's all year round, right? So it really gets me thinking about where's the highest value for contractors. And I know you're all in different states, but also in different type of industries. But maybe we could talk about that. What's like the earliest value we can supply to contractors? What is the carrot to get them going?
Right. So I guess I'll pick up on that. I mean, contractors are all driven based on delivering projects on time and on budget, right? So if you can show that they can be more efficient and deliver projects so they can make money and get paid, that's going to be the biggest carrot. And for their users out in the field, as these guys described, if they can do that with tools that are easy to use, then they'll adopt, and then management, project management behind the scenes will get the data they need to make better, faster decisions to keep projects on budget and on schedule.
Makes sense.
I think it's not just the money side of it too. Obviously, like return on investment is going to be huge for people, and they're going to respond to that if they see a path to making money from what their investment is. But I think it's also the time is really important. Like you talked about how busy and crazy these guys are. And, if at the end of the day you have to sit down at your desk and do a bunch of busy work in order to stay on budget and stay on track, like that becomes burdensome and wears on you. And so if you show them something that they can reduce the time it requires to do some of that work, that's just great. They can use that time for their family to do other things. And then it's also maybe something that they can hand off to somebody else because it's an explainable task that somebody else can do for them.
Would you say that contractors are seeing the shift right now that okay, now is the time to start digitizing? We talked about the urgency about making more money and there's maybe competition, but do you see other factors that create urgency for contractors? Like why now, right?
Yeah, I would say why now is because there's a lot of work out there to be done. They're trying to compete with other people that are leveraging technology to get things done. But the biggest issue is really around they have a lack of skilled labor. They can't find people to bring into the industry and get interested and excited. So they have to make the people that they have way more productive in order to actually deliver projects.
It's about doing more with less resources, right? So there's all this new generation coming into the construction industry. Some of them are not very much hard workers. We've had this problem in many states where they have this different culture or vision about what the work is outside on the field. So now on a different perspective, where do you think tech can provide the most value on the field, let's say? Let's start there.
I think construction ends up boiling down to coordination and sequencing, and you've got potentially 100 different companies having to work together on a job site. So I think everyone now realizes that networking, social networking and communicating and text chains and groups and chats and sharing of files and data, it's actually what databases and software is really good at. So I think it's a perfect use case. A lot of coordination, a lot of sequencing, a lot of timing. You got to kind of get everything right. You got to get everyone communicating and aware and knowledgeable, and it's actually perfect for software, so.
It's the access to information, right?
Yeah.
Got it. So from the office perspective, is it the same vision to have access to the field information faster, or is there something that motivates even more the office workers or managers to digitize?
I mean, I would say that for the office workers, right, they can't really do their jobs without data. So they need the information in as real time as possible from the field in order to be able to do their jobs, right? So the more you can get field people tooled up so they can actually capture data quickly and have the office people be able to make sense of all that information quickly and then synthesize it and then do the coordination and collaboration with the whole extended project team and ecosystem of contractors, that has huge implications on driving the best outcomes for a project.
I'd add that they not only need access to information to do their jobs, but with lack of it, they can actually be heavily misinformed by the squeaky wheel, for example. So if they don't have data to make decisions, there's this guy or that guy who's complaining a lot or who's raising some point to them, and it actually will not only not give them all the information to make the right decision, but misinform them and redirect them in a bad way as well.
Yeah, we're going to touch on the power of data a bit later, but do you also think, guys, that having tech is a way to attract some more workforce? Because a lot of contractors are saying that, but I kind of want your take on this.
Yeah, I was going to go there because I do think that the direction we're going in terms of technology adoption and things that are a little more interesting to do their work, so people aren't doing busy work as was already described here, and they're doing more interesting things. And we're trying to attract the generation of people that are very tech savvy, that have always been on mobile phones or on the web. They're gamers. They want that. That's the type of environment and tools that they think they should be using in the workforce. So if they come and see that we're still using paper forms and Excel spreadsheets and things that look like that, it's hard to attract them to the industry. So the direction we're going with kind of more interesting, mobile friendly, easy web friendly tools that they're, with interfaces that they're used to, plus you start making it more going towards model-based technologies. It's kind of what they're used to, and it's definitely something that even if you're not using it on a day-to-day basis on a job site, it can definitely help us attract talent into the industry.
Like construction and prop tech, there's also a deficit of labor in the engineering space, and I totally agree that companies can use, if they're using great tools and technology, they can use it as a recruitment tool. And then I think software companies can actually help support that effort in a way too, by helping, like for example, if a building can offer an engineer a technology they can use and then offer an opportunity for them to become certified in that technology or have that as an accolade that they can put on their resume. It not only helps them attract technology, but it helps the individual then promote their career. And I think so like everybody can sort of benefit, all the parties involved there.
So I feel like gamification is almost part of the goal to attract new people. People are addicted to social media, so if you can make it as easy as social media, we're going to have another problem. People are always going to be on their construction apps, right? But this brings me to the other point that right now a lot of training and implementation, onboarding, I mean, it's so hard to adopt. There's a lot of cases out there where people are frustrated because they're going from one software to another, and those one are the difficult cases to kind of say, right? So what is your take on like the adoption?
My take there, and we already talked a little bit about adoption, but from an actual technology software perspective, it has to be easy to use because, they use technology and mobile apps and web apps in their day-to-day life. So if we don't, as a technology industry, deliver software that has the same type of intuitive interface that they can just go in and start being productive almost immediately, then they're not going to adopt it. That's one of the biggest barriers. That, and as was already described, having a top-down strategic technology plan with support from management to drive the usage well. But if it's not easy to use, they're still not going to use it.
Yeah. It's the vendor's responsibility to create software that's intuitive. At my company, I end up being a tester, and I ask no training. Like I want the release, and I want no guidance. I want to just go. It should be that easy. You sit down, you know what to do. That's the goal as product managers. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can tell you a story when I was building some field management software for the heavy civil industry, and I said, we're just going to go and job shadow like what a foreman does. And so he's like, I got this great technology. It's got this interface. I can use it. I use it every day. I got my tablet. And what we witnessed was he goes off, he gets out of his truck, he throws the tablet on, he doesn't bring it with him. And we're like, well, what are you doing? We're like, well, I love the app, and when the day is done, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee, and I'm going to fill everything in. It's like, okay, that app is failing for what it's supposed to be doing because it's trying to it's easier if you capture the data at the point of when things are happening, but that application failed in its purpose. So everything I've done since then is about how do we avoid that and make it really easy for that person just to have the device available and make it so simple for them to use that you're capturing real-time data.
I really love that use case because the software engineers and the project managers, they intended the software to be used in a certain way, but then you only see this type of stuff when you stay close to your clients, right? So it's really amazing to see that some software companies are investing into their clients to see how they're using the system, right?
It was fun to bring the product designers and have them sit. They're usually in their cubicle or whatever in their space in front of their laptops. To have them sit next to a foreman who's driving a truck around a big highway project, and they learned a lot in just a 1 or 2 days, and that was right on.
Your gamification comment, though, I think is also really spot on. Like I worked with a manager that he would put up the leaderboard in his morning meeting every day, and it showed people's productivity from the day before, and it creates competitiveness and shame, and that forces people like, I don't want to be last on the leaderboard. I want to get up there, and so for different reasons. And then that same manager also connected, again, back to the stick part, but connected people's bonuses to performance. And so there was not only like the competitive incentive, but there was the bottom line pay, back your pocket incentive as well.
Makes sense. Thank you for that, Kyle. And I wanted to talk maybe about the most overrated part of onboarding. Do you feel like customers give as much importance to onboarding as the software vendors do, right? And where's the most overrated part of the onboarding?
I mean, I think you want to do something thoughtful in onboarding, right? Because whatever you're left at when you exit that implementation is sort of, you have to either undo it or evolve it from there. So you want to do something thoughtful, but any process that takes too long or goes into too much analysis paralysis it's going to be counterproductive. So I think you have to find that balance between something thoughtful and like get out of this phase and start getting returns from it. So I think when you can break the process into consumable chunks where people see progress, then that's really beneficial. So yes, even if the vendor has that vision that this implementation is really thoughtful, if the customer is not getting any sort of like return or value from it right away, it's like, well, when are we going to get there? Like, so if they can be like, oh, you do this and then you're going to start to be able to do this, and then you do this and you start to be able to do this, and then so just try to get some immediate reward built in would be really helpful.
Yeah, there's definitely an idea of a quicker time to value on implementation. And then so if your software comes off the shelf, kind of ready to go and purpose built for the particular industry that you serve, with templates and everything, that's super helpful. I'd also say that you really want to break the implementation and deployment into two phases, right? Because you really have two personas. One is the implementer, like the admins who are setting things up, and then train and deploy to the users who are completely different, who don't really even need to see what happens in the background in terms of time to do any kind of implementation part, like in terms of setup. But you don't want the setup to be too long because it's all about time to value.
Absolutely. And sometimes, unfortunately, the change management is our responsibility as well as software vendors, right? So can you talk to me about examples where you had to help a company kind of change their culture or do the change management for them? Because implementing software is one thing, but a lot of the time it comes with leadership and changing procedures, and we have to get involved for it to work, right? I don't know if you can share on that, guys.
We, in most of my career, we've hired implementers who are software professionals, implementation professionals, and they had various backgrounds. They implemented all kinds of different software products. This one's been a little different. We actually have hired ex-users, ex-customers, and then we had the challenge of teaching them how to get through an implementation process and do the proper data collection and configuration, processes. But the cool thing about it, back to your question, is they actually understand the business. They speak their language. They get their attention immediately. They can say, I was a user, like literally, I was a user. And when it goes to the change management, they're able to connect the dots where they'll say, like, I know you dispatch equipment in this way. I did too. I know you have a whiteboard. I did too. Here's how the online schedule is going to change, and connect the dots. So you got to somehow get that domain expertise and make it real and show, and not easy.
So the key here is to have the expertise and having lived the pain to be able to
ideally have at least those anecdotes. If you haven't been in those roles as a user, you at least have figured it out. You've learned. You've
worked with 5
domain.
customers like you who did the same thing. You can tell that story.
Yeah. I do have an implementer who has no crane service experience, yet is now implemented 20 different crane companies. And now I think the crane customers, you worked in crane, haven't you? Now they're fooled. So yeah.
I'd agree with that. I mean, at Contruent, all our implementers are ex-users or they've already implemented project controls software before as admins. So they know the pain, they know how to implement. So it helps a lot. And then the other thing that they do is they always find who's going to be the core evangelist inside that company and then go to look for pockets of success, because success breeds further success. It's one of the things I did even when I was at Bentley Systems, for example. We deployed a field data capture solution but it was a change of process. It was capture based on clicking on a model object and then updating that object's progress. And there was a lot of resistance at first, and then we got it into the hands of like 3 or 4 superintendents, and then they were blown away, and then everybody used it. So I mean that's an approach too towards, how do you make adoption viral for software.
We actually had a rule. Our sales folks were not allowed to sell at the top of the company, whether it's Clark or Turner or Skanska. Don't go to the top. Go to the project level. Get one team and go get a pizza and go on site and try to find a team that is particularly ready to do some new technology. Get that team to be successful, and then all of a sudden it spreads. They'll tell their buddies and they'll have a regional meeting. And so we very deliberately went project by project to start. And then all of a sudden we had 50 different projects in that GC. So yeah, it's a good approach.
Very interesting. So adoption is critical, but the goal of having the adoption is to have access to that data. So we started talking about data before, visibility being at the epicenter of the goals of construction companies, right? They want to have information now, and they don't want to be compiling Excels forever, right? They want the information now. So can you talk to me a little bit about some experiences that you've had where the customer benefited tremendously about having data, right?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll describe, it's all about, I break data into 3 things, right? It's data capture, and then allowing data access and collaboration, and then analyzing the data, right? So, but from my experience, it's about how do you make the field users able to capture data in a structured way? Because if it's not structured and it's not real time, it's hard to make decisions that are going to really impact issues that are happening in the field at the time. But the thing that I see that's happening more and more is that all that data is structured data is starting to come together, even from multiple applications, and elevating to the decision makers through more powerful reports in analytics and business intelligence. And ultimately, I'm making a leap here towards like AI-based of predictive kind of insights that the executives or project managers didn't have before, that's from data that's coming from the field. So they're able to basically really change everything based on the ability to use the data that they're capturing.
You talked about just collecting data in the right way so that it's usable. To go back to just briefly to the topic you were asking about before within implementation, a good implementer will also understand what the customer's end goal is and what they're hoping to answer and report on, and work backwards from that. Because instead, if you start with the workflow that you want, and then there's an assumption that you might be able to answer X, Y, and Z with that data when in fact you can't. And so I think a good implementer will also think about what the data is that they're trying to produce and make sure that you're collecting it and building a workflow from the start that supports it.
And you asked for a couple of examples, and maybe two examples, and I'll start with one around just how data came into play. It's like, the ability to have structured data that you can access is super powerful. And I've seen a customer where they basically are capturing data all the time, but at the end of the day, it's really difficult to find it. They collect images, tons of documentation, filling out forms all the time. They end up with an amazing amount of information. In this particular case, they had a change order, and they were at risk of going into some kind of litigation, but they were able to quickly go back because of the way data is stored and captured and be able to be accessed. They were able to go back to their owner and be like, and be like, here's the information. Here's exactly what happened on this day. It was snowing or whatever, and we couldn't do the work. And then it never got to litigation. They basically were able to close out the change order and got paid.
Amazing. So
with the power you have now in your hand, you can take photographs, you can voice in, whatever it is you want to verify. Your construction's about delivering to a design and verifying. All the contractors have to verify that they delivered on time, but of quality. And these tools are perfectly purpose-built for being, walking around a job site and verifying and building that case that you actually did the job.
So structured data as a result, right? This is something personally I pride myself on, is the fact that if the data is structured, it's very easy to capture it and utilize it in a recommendation point of view with everything that we're talking about AI. So before we go there, do you see more importance to have like performance data versus field data versus cost data? Or is it when all these types of data kind of work together? What's your take on that, guys?
It's all when it all works together, right? I mean, it's all about cost, schedule, and quality. So, like, you have to be able to manage all those three legs of the stool, and that's because that's what contractors care about. So it's definitely performance information, especially if you're a self-performing contractor. That's probably a huge area. But yes. I guess I don't know what are details you're looking for on that one.
So the contractors, they have so much data right now. Do you think it's the vendors and the software companies that have to make tools so that they can utilize that data directly, like off the shelf? Because I meet contractors every day. They say, yeah, we have data. Yeah, where does it come from? How is it structured? What can you do with it?
Yeah, I think that the issue is that they got a lot of data. It's not always structured. They should strive to use tools where the data is structured. I think as a vendor industry, we need to provide that ability for them to capture structured information. There's also still a lot of disparate data. They have a bunch of different systems that don't talk to each other. So, we need that. As a contractor that's acquiring software, you need to make sure that you can, some way, have it talk to each other so you can have one single source of truth that then you can layer on analytics to be able to find the insights and make better, faster decisions based on that data. But it's all about pulling information together that might be from different sources, and it may or may not always be structured.
So I think personally a lot of contractors need help with that portion because they have data or they think they have data and they don't really know what to do with it. But now that we have data and there are systems that supply clean, structured performance data, where do you think we're going with this? This is the fun part of the podcast.
I'd love that take. Because where we're going with that is, okay, now I have structured information so I can give reports and dashboards. But where that's going now is what uses structured data really well and just general documentation is overlaying an AI or ML on top of that in order to more quickly make sense of information and deliver it back up. If we talk about ease of use, I imagine a world where we, instead of still having to be able to understand how to filter and group and sort and produce dashboards that make sense, I could just in a natural language kind of chatbot interface ask a tool a question, leveraging all the data that's been structured and then have it be able to provide me back a natural language response that anybody could understand. And then if I want to do a little bit more in depth, I can have an agent that will then produce a dashboard for me so I can communicate and collaborate with others, or have an agent that's workflow where they can drive a workflow. Like this is my progress. I want to do a progress payment application, or I want to do a change order and submit that. The agents can start doing that. So I've made a little bit of a leap in technology, but that is the power of having tools that provide structured data, because it just makes that data AI ready.
I think all those different things are really important, though. Like, you're going to need them for different personas and different consumers of the data. So, and like you talked earlier about, using AI or just using technology to attract like a younger workforce. Like, my kids don't know how to open a book and look something up. Like, they just chirp at Alexa, like, what's the answer to this question? And they get it. And so you're going to have like a class of users that are going to expect to just be able to just ask a question and get the answer. And that's super convenient for lots of different people. So it's not just younger people, but you're going to have people that expect that. But then I think that like day-to-day users that are in the application, dashboarding, I think, is really important for them, because they're going to look back to that sort of like leaderboard concept and looking for specific KPIs and metrics. And then I think you're always going to have like a class of users or people that are not direct users of the application, but might want to get like summary reporting and consume data once a month in that fashion. And so even though AI is becoming such like a hot button topic and way to consume data, I think you're going to need lots of different ways for a long time.
I think AI will change the way we generate those reports too, though. Because
that's true.
Because a lot of products will give you kind of off-the-shelf standard reports, but a lot of consumers of those reports and dashboards want to customize them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can just say, "Hey AI, thank you for this natural language answer, but now generate a dashboard that looks like X, Y, and Z, so that I can communicate to my stakeholders," that's going to be powerful and really democratize all the information that all these different personas capture in the field and in the office for people that are making decisions about projects.
So dashboarding capabilities, visibility, and then recommendations upon clean structured data. Tim, did you want to add anything on the vision of AI for maybe subcontractors?
Very well put.
Got it. Thank you, guys. To wrap this up, I have a little game that's called a lightning round, okay? So a few quick fun questions, one sentence answer, okay? Let's give this a swirl. Most overrated construction trend right now?
Digital twins.
Okay, cool.
Not Civalgo.
Good one, good one. I like that one.
I've been hearing about robots for a long, long time.
Got it.
I keep seeing videos, but I'm not sure. We'll see.
Okay,
It might be
yeah.
the future.
I also like those videos where people are on the sidelines, and I actually looked through something they did in China, 158 kilometers of road with no human beings, but that's like a world pilot project, right? When you ask these people, how are you doing your daily logs? A lot of the time it's like paper or disconnected app, right? So good one. I like that. Biggest mistake.
But the corollary I'll say to that is, we say that, but we still have robots all over the job site right now in the form of data capture. We're flying drones, especially for heavy civil. There's a lot of drones capturing data or just fixed cameras. We've solved the photogrammetry problem, and to be able to like take photographs, create models, and make sense of those resulting models and imagery for really good information. I do agree, though. It's like, I would think that all the equipment manufacturers, ideally, they would love to get rid of the human operator, just because that's where I think 30 or 40% of the cost is, right? So it is coming, but I do agree. We've been talking about it for a long time, and it's probably a ways off.
I have a few crazy responses to that, but that's going to be in another podcast.
But I have been watching machine guidance for a long time for earthworks and grading, so that robot assist does exist today, and it's pretty good.
Absolutely.
Not to contradict my friend Tim, because he's super smart.
I mean, lasers, point clouds, absolutely, yeah. Photography.
So the next question was the biggest mistakes contractors make when buying tech.
I think it's being on the extremes, whichever one it is, whether it's like you're anti-technology or you're like technology happy and you're buying a whole bunch of stuff with no like thoughtful strategy on how it all works together. Like, just be thoughtful about what you're doing.
I concur with that. You need to have basically a technology strategy, right? Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark, and you're more likely to fail on your purchase.
Yeah, I would say top-down commitment. So really all in, you're going to get support. Everyone's going to be motivated and pushed to adopt top-down. Yeah.
I've seen that a few times where the leaders, they buy something and they don't even support it. You need leadership through any type of digital shift, right? Cool, thanks guys. And how about what's the one thing that leaders should start doing besides, complimenting and following up on investments, but what is one thing that leaders should start doing immediately?
It's like leaders who are making technology decisions need to make sure they have a technology strategy and roadmap.
Makes sense. Yeah, because or else they're just going to be buying, like you said, a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't concur with each other, and it's not going to make any sense. Got it. And last but not least, what could we tell our fellow contractors to stop doing, right?
Stop using paper forms out in the field, and stop using Excel spreadsheets to analyze data.
Yeah, I just think it's helping the field understand that this technology is there to help them do their jobs better and more efficiently. And the people that are resisting it, that's a red flag. You know, what do they have to hide?
Yeah, because transparency and visibility are at the rendezvous, right? Cool, guys. That wraps up our lightning round. As one of the missions and the goals of the Civalgo podcast is to give advice. You guys have any last piece of advice for any contractor out there that's looking to do a digital shift in the near future?
I would just say it's the most exciting time probably in our lives around technology, personally, but also professionally. Enjoy it, embrace it, experiment, try things, have fun with it.
Makes sense. So guys, I'm super happy to have had you here in our roundtable on construction tech. I want to remind the mission of the Civalgo podcast is to give advice, best practices, and insights to the construction industry. To all the audience, if you can help us in our mission, please share this podcast with your networks. It's going to contribute to elevating the level of the construction industry. Sincerely, guys, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.